just so that, because we've got some families that I know are unable to make it. So just like the Year 6 one, this will be recorded, will be popped onto our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to watch this again if you want to, or you can watch this with children or maybe partners and things who want to know a bit more about how the SATs work. So let me start sharing my screen and I will talk you through. Screen share. Here we go. I will talk you through the SATs for Year 2 children. Let's go back to the beginning. See if I can make it a bit bigger. There we go. Lovely. Mrs. Wall, I can see you on my screen. If you can see that, okay, can you give me a wave? Can you see the Stukely logo? Oh, amazing. Super. Thank you. Just to make sure, otherwise I'll start talking and then realise you're not looking at the right thing. So thank you for your time. I'm going to be keeping you for about 15-20 minutes or so, just to talk through the expectation around Year 2s and the end of Key Stage SAT tests. Some of you may have been through this process before. For some of you, this may be new. For some of you, you may have thought you were going to go through this process before. And then because of COVID, maybe the SAT test didn't go ahead. So these have been running for a number of years now, with the exception of the last 2 years, because of lockdowns and children not being in school as much as they were. So we're back to the same system and routine that Mrs. Hunt and I are quite familiar with, and the children do get very used to it very quickly too. So SAT tests, let's talk about what they are. In May, Year 2 children across the country take SAT tests, National Curriculum Tests. These are tests which are sent in to us. We don't write them. They're written by the Department of Education, and they are a way of checking to see how children have been progressing in Key Stage 1 and what they need to work on as they go into Year 3. So that they are tested on their reading ability, their reading comprehension and their understanding, to being able to answer questions about text. They're tested on grammatical features, verbs, nouns, full stops, capital letters. They're also tested on spellings, particular rules like maybe a silent K or letters that have a shun sound. They're also tested in maths, which is twofold. So it looks at arithmetic, so how quickly they can answer questions with number, and then reasoning problems, which are more word problems and questions about shape and space and those sorts of things. So first of all, if we talk about the reading test, the reading test is made up of 2 different papers. The first one has a set of sentences or a bit of text, and then it will have questions directly after it. It's much shorter out of the 2 of the papers. It's very, very similar feel to how they would do an AR test, and that they've read something and then they answer those questions about it. Many of the answers are there, so they might be retrieving them. Some of them they might have to reread the text and think of the answer based on their inference and their comprehension. Now, paper 2 is a bit trickier because there was a longer piece of text, and it tends to come in this kind of form. So it comes in a booklet to us. The children have a copy of that booklet. They spend some time reading it, and then in a separate booklet, they answer some questions. Now, the reason why that one tends to be a bit trickier is because children seem to get it in their head that it's a memory test. They have to remember everything, where of course they don't, because this is going to be with them for the duration of the test. So at any point, they can look back in this, check their answer, maybe underline something, pick out that they think the answer might be. This isn't taken away from them at all. Each of those papers is half and half, so it's worth 50% of the marks. The guide is that it lasts around 30 minutes. Now, the luxury for us in Key Stage 1 is that at any point we can take a break and we can come back to the questions, or we can do it in a smaller group, or we can have some more time later on to have a look. So there isn't that kind of time pressure that happens with the GCSE or in Key Stage 2 SATs. Here we go. So in terms of the grammar, the punctuation, the spelling test, again, this is made up of 2 parts. First of all, it's a spelling test, like the old-fashioned spelling test where The children have a sentence, there's a word missing, we will read them that sentence, and the children then use their phonics awareness or their spelling rules and practice to then attempt that spelling. There's 20 marks for that question. The second paper is a little bit longer because there will be a mixture of sentences. There might be a capital letter missing. They might be asked to recognise the verbs. Lots of things that we've practiced in school all the time anyway. So nothing there to catch them out. This is something that we would do day in, day out. They're used to these kind of routines. Jumped too much, didn't it? Let's go back. Here we go, the maths. So the maths test. Maths test again comes in two parts, two papers. And the first one has the arithmetic part, the sort of good old fashioned, we might remember the mental arithmetic. You know, your teacher used to read out a question, then you'd write them down. But in this instance, it is a written paper. So there might be questions starting nice and easy, like 10, take away 7, and then they'll get progressively harder as they work through their way through the paper. Now we practice arithmetic tests all the time. So again, it's nothing that the children aren't familiar with. We practice them each week. We go over our answers. We look at what we could draw to help us. So all the time, those kind of strategies are practiced in school. The second paper checks fluency and problem solving and checks on reasoning. So if the children know a particular maths fact, can they use that maths fact to help them to solve a slightly trickier question? And again, they're both worth similar marks, and it gives us an overall score on how they're doing in maths. Now, children aren't allowed to use, you know, calculators or number lines and things to help them. We don't have to change anything in the classroom, which is useful. So they might look around and think, oh, I remember doing this in maths and it says something on the board about that. And that's fine, because that's part of normal classroom practice. Okay, so when do the SATs take place? Now, in Key Stage 1, the tests come into us, and from the first day in May, so right from the beginning of May, we are allowed to access and start using those papers. Now, we don't have to be set in how we do it. So with Key Stage 2, they are given a specific week, a specific day and time, and it has to happen in that particular slot. We have the flexibility to keep doing all the tests throughout the whole of that month. Now we do like to, and we do normally do get cracking quite quickly, because it means that we can, if there's any children that are away, or if there's any children that miss any tests, then it gives us, we've still got plenty of time to catch up. Also, it means that if we want to give children plenty of breaks, then it means we don't have to rush and do it all too quickly. So we bring the tests into the classroom. The children sit in their places like they would normally, and we do the tests in the classroom, maybe as a whole class, depending on which test it is. Sometimes we might do them in a small group. So the idea, because they're familiar with the tests, because they're familiar with arithmetic papers, that it's very low stress and it's done in a very low key way. How will the tests be marked? So they are marked by us. Sometimes we do tests with children and we encourage them to get their purple polishing pens out and to mark alongside as we go through our answers. Now they are marked by us. So we get sent the information and around the guidance around the best way to mark them. And it's very different to the old money, where you were given a particular level on where your child is working at, because they're going to be given a scaled score. And you would have seen some of these already when reports and data has come home. So it goes into a bit of a super algorithm. The raw score is converted into a scaled score. Now, the average of what we're looking for to be a good sound age related for Key Stage 1 is the magic score of 100. And again, some of you may have already seen, as you've had reports and data come home already, that your child may be working quite close to 100. They might be working around the 85 mark, which is the minimum level. They could be working up to the higher maximum score of 115. which would equate to working at greater depth in that particular subject. Now, the Department of Education aims for 85% of children to reach the expected standard, and that's even though we've obviously been through tricky times over the last couple of years. You know, some children have missed education and things. That standard is still there, and it helps us to ensure that our standards are high and that, you know, we're meeting the needs of the children. Now, other subjects are assessed. We will look at children's writing. We will look at children's writing amongst the team. So we'll look together as staff and moderate that and give it the best kind of score that we feel that where the child is working at. We'll also have a look at it across other schools as well. And this year, myself and Mrs. Peake, one of the teachers in school, are working with the local authority to moderate and to work with other schools in that. So that's going to help us too. You will also be given at the end of the year some information around where your child is working at in terms of speaking and listening. And I will say, you know, I'm mum too, and I remember the speaking bit can sometimes be quite strong. Listening with children can be a bit trickier. But they are assessed on, you know, their articulation, how they can listen and follow instructions. They will also be given a science score as well. That's an age-related or not working at expected, so that's quite a straightforward one. Now, they're not externally, a test doesn't come in for those. That's something that the staff in school will be assessing throughout the whole of the year. Right, the important one. How can you prepare your child for the SAT testing? And actually, it's the first of many sets of tests that they will take throughout all of their education. So, you know, we want to make sure that you talk about it at home and try not to worry, because they will face tests for everything in life. You know, at some point they may have a driving test, or you know, they may have to particularly GCSE or an A level. So the testing and that kind of routine, we want it to become normal part of learning and improving and getting better. Little things you can do to help those children that are reading regularly, that are recording in their learning log, that are talking about books. Those children are the ones that show us that, you know, they've got a really strong sense of literacy, comprehension, and they're making progress in that subject. So that's really important. TT Rockstars tasks, again, it does tend to be the same kind of names of children that come up that are being and going on there regularly. It'd be really nice to see some other children having a go and just pushing themselves and challenging, because we know they can do it, and we practice these things in school. Now, this one is definitely an easier said than done, isn't it, in COVID times? But ensuring your child is in school during May, you know, that's not going to be a time where we would advise you know, a holiday or a long weekend, because we can't guarantee when those tests will take place, and we need to ensure we have that data. And the final one is have a look through the completed tests with your child. So we've already sent home some test papers that your children have done. We sent those home before Christmas. Towards the end of this week, you will get some information about where your child is currently working at the moment. And you will also get some of the past papers that we've been working on as well. So just spend some time over the next holidays just having a look through them. Is it that you've noticed there's a particular fractions question that they always seem to get stuck on, or is it a particular spelling rule? Is it something you could have a little practice at home? Because all of those things are going to help them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you, stop that, super. I'm going to show you a short video, and this video just reiterates lots of the messages that I've just said. It's quite an old video actually, but nothing's changed around the testing system. There was rumour a few years ago that the Key Stage 1 tests would come to an end next year, but the government they want to sort of pursue that a little bit further. So for the next few years, the tests will be continuing in Key Stage 1. I'm going to put that back to the start and make it a little bit bigger.
I don't know about anyone else, but I can't hear the video.
Oh, no, I was going to say that as well.
Same.
But if,
Yeah,
you're,
you're not
but if you're able to send the slides around, then I guess we'll have the link.
Sorry, I'm not sure why. It does have the subtitles across the bottom, but that's not going to be as helpful, is it, as to watch and have the sound on. I apologise, but I will put that onto our Twitter page, and I can put that in the link. All of the messages in that video are things that I've talked about already, so it doesn't say anything that's different. It's just to reassure you that the testing process complements our assessments that we make on children at the end of the year. They're not the be all and end all. So we know that there are some children that are better in a test scenario than others, and that's why we practice it lots in school. And we also know there might be some children that they're a little bit under the weather, or they've just come back to school. Maybe on a particular day they don't perform as what we would expected. So the nice thing for us is that we use the tests to enhance and inform our judgment. It's not the definitive answer. Okay. What I will do then is I'll leave it there. Mrs. Hunt and I are here for the next couple of minutes. We've been keeping an eye on the chat, and there aren't any questions yet. But if you think, oh, I wonder what happens with this subject, or you have a particular question around the testing, then please do pop it in the box. As I say, what's going to happen this week is you will get a report card with the current scaled scores on for your child, and you will also receive the test papers as well from the recent tests. So one of the questions we've had around if the child is unwell for the test, and obviously this current climate, that could well happen. We will just catch up once they are back in school. If there is a particular circumstance, so for example, it's a longer period of time, then we'll inform the statutory assessment team so that they know that. So there isn't any penalisation, for want of a better word, for not doing very well in the tests. There's never any surprises to us. So children throughout the whole of this year continue to make progress. So we do these tests with them back in the autumn, and that gives us an indication of where children are currently at. We then repeat them, which is what these ones you'll be taking home this week. And then we do the actual new one that comes into us in May. So that helps us to see where the children made progress, because they all do in their own way. It also means that as they move into year 3, there might be a particular group that need to work on something, and that then becomes a focus for them as they move into year 3. How will the affect results of each test? Not sure about the question. So in terms of the testing process, as I said, they're tested in the classrooms. We do it in small groups, and we make it as as non-threatening and as much as possible. So it's quite a relaxed. In fact, actually, when you get the new ones that come in, they come through in a box, in a packet, and it's actually quite exciting. So we can't do a big, oh, this, we've got our new tests, we're going to do them. No, children aren't streamed into year 3. There will be 2 classes, just as there are in year 2, with mixed abilities. Yep, so interesting one about handwriting. Handwriting is an important part when we look at children's story writing. So we look at fiction writing, so writing stories, and non-fiction, and we look at how well children can communicate. So hence handwriting is part of that. And we do have some children that find that quite difficult, and they might have some particular things to help them, but we can also we're allowed to use some element of technology if we need to. So spelling practice. Spelling practice is a difficult one because some schools do it differently. Some do a test each week, but then find that the children don't particularly take in those spellings anyway. So we just do lots of practice all the time. The main thing I would recommend for spellings is the common exception words, which are on our Year 2 Twitter page. I can retweet those as well. And we see tests more often. So we do in Year 2, we do the tests 3 times a year. So what we don't want to do is get into where if we were to do it more, you don't then necessarily allow a longer period of time to put all the teaching in between. So 3 times a year is a comfortable amount. So can we get a written record test results to date? Do you mean how the children in Key Stage 1 have fared? I think that might be what that one means. So Key Stage 1 data isn't reported in the same way as Key Stage 2. So you will be able to find how Key Stage 2 pupils score on our website and externally. But these are the ones you'll get this week. So I've just looked at the question. It said around the day. Yeah. So this week you will get a report card which will have the last set of test scores on, and it will have the next the papers that we worked on. In terms of this set like this, we won't practice these again. However, each week we're always practicing little bits of this. So we won't have a full paper to do, but all the time we're writing, and we use that to assess their writing and what they need next. We do arithmetic tests, we're practicing TT rock styles all the time. So even though it's not a whole full set of these, we do little snippets of this week in, week out anyway, just as part of our practice. So no more questions? Yep. So I'll say thank you very much for joining us. What will happen now is I will save this recording and pop it onto our Year 2 Twitter. I will also put that video from the Department of Education onto our Twitter as well, so you can watch that through and then you'll be able to hear it. I apologise for that. And then by the end of this week, you will have a set of papers and data of where your child is currently working. Okay. If you have any specific questions about your child, then I would direct you to their particular class teacher. So if your child's in Miss Smart's class and you have a question about how your child is progressing and a particular subject, then just drop her an email. Okay, thank you very much for your time, everybody. It was nice to see you all virtually.
Thank you.
I'll go back and see it on the screen.
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you.
Lovely stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Nice to see you all.
Bye.
Thank